So it was December 2007 that I was sitting at the table, like you guys, and if you had asked me then how close was I would have said 2 years max. Like I never would have thought 4 years from now before the book was out. It takes a lot longer than you think. But in November 2007, so right before I came for the book conference, I emailed the editor. I had an introduction from people who had worked with her and liked her. This was an editor at California Press. Why did I pick California Press? For all the reasons that Eileen just said. It made sense for where my book would be in terms of Middle East studies, the kind of really rich ethnography that I was trying to write, and then this medical organ transplant stuff. Was a lot of books were coming out of California Press on that. And so she was very interested. I felt really lucky about that. And I practiced, like these things that you think should just come naturally, I actually practiced giving the 30-minute spiel. 30-second. Not 30 minutes. They do not have 30 minutes. 30-second, literally 30 seconds. I said what it was about, why it was important.
Can we hear it?
Oh, how will I recreate it? I never really think about my book as a book about organ transplantation. So I say this is a book that takes a debate about organ transplantation that erupted in Egypt for over 30 years as a lens to look at medical authority and Islamic authority at a time of major social and political transformation.
That's good.
I do that in a sentence. And in my book, what I end up doing is in the introduction, I set up puzzles. So like 6 puzzles. So I say, Egypt was the first pioneer of the region to start this new life-saving medical technology, and yet it was the only country in the region to not pass a law for over 30 years. And then I have another puzzle. All the religious scholars in Egypt say there's no problem, this is commendable, this will get you spiritual rewards, and yet patients, doctors refuse on religious grounds. And I start another puzzle. Everybody in Egypt agrees that one shouldn't sell a piece of the body, and yet 90% of organ transactions occur just in that way. So I have like a bunch of puzzles. That's how I set it up. And then I explain not only that you have to know this stuff about Egypt to be able to understand these puzzles, but that understanding these puzzles will now suddenly explain stuff about Egypt that we had never understood before. And that getting there to that to be able to say confidently that this is what my book does took a lot. This is why it takes so long to be able to say that and believe it and to make a convincing case for it. So I did that, the 30-second spiel. You probably wouldn't recommend this. I don't know if I would recommend this, but I did the whole process twice. So I got an advanced contract.
Oh, right.
And then I got a contract. Now, why would anybody do that? There's a couple of reasons. If you don't have a tenure-track job and you're on the market, from the editor's perspective, they don't think it's such a big deal to have an advanced contract because they can pull out if they want to, right? But on the job market, it actually makes a big difference to say, I have an advanced contract with the University of California Press. Mm-hmm. That was one reason that I did that. The second reason, I really wanted to get this thing I was just so anxious to get this thing in the pipeline, but I didn't have a revised draft yet. And I said, would you consider sending out the introduction and 3 chapters for review for an advanced contract? And she said, yeah, sure. The third reason that I liked doing that was I was so insecure at the time. I just wanted any kind of feedback. And I got it twice, right? So I got these fantastic people who did not take 8 weeks. They took 6 months.
Oh my God.
6 months.
Wow.
To come back and at that very early stage, I needed that redirection. And then when I did have the full draft and I sent it out again and I got the reviews on the full things, they were all pretty minor revisions compared to that first one where I was like, you need a chapter that does this. This is all out of order. And I guess in retrospect, I needed that kind of direction at that early stage. I don't think I would recommend it in terms of time because you do end up doing the whole thing twice. So it does take up a lot of time. So what I would say is if you have a good idea about what you want your book to look like, so first ask yourself, not just in terms of picking out the publisher, but what is my model? right? What am I really good at? And what book do I really want this book to be like? And so the way I think about it is that, like, what am I really good at? I think I'm really good at explaining things. And I'm really good at writing provocatively. I decided that those were my two, what I'm really good at. I don't think I'm the best detective, historical, medical, you know, I didn't get into every single kind of detail in the world, but I had a very provocative story to tell, and I really wanted to labor over every sentence. I really wanted to make every sentence beautiful. And those were the models that I was. But I mean, I think you can ask yourself, what kind of book do I want it about content? Like, I got this research that nobody else got. I'm telling an important story that nobody else got. Then spending the extra 2 years on making every sentence beautiful is probably not worth it. But I really wanted every sentence in my book I don't know. I really wanted that, and I spent the extra years doing it, and I'm really happy with the product. So I think asking yourself, where is my best contribution, and then going for that. The other advice I have, which is really good, I really needed to hear this my first year on the tenure track, is be proactive and not reactive with your writing. And so what we tend to do is we're new assistant professors, and then people say, oh, you're working on this, will you write an article for my special journal, or oh, I would love this for my edited volume, oh, and you just so want confirmation at that time. You're like, okay, and then you start doing things that's not where you should be going. So you actually should sit down and say, I want a book, and I want 3 really well-placed journal articles in these places, and I am going to allocate this time. This is my timeline, and I'm going to allocate this time towards those goals. And then when everybody starts to say, can I have a piece here, can I have it, you say no. or you say, I can give you this piece after I've written it for the journal article. You can republish it for that. And it takes a lot of confidence that you don't have as a junior faculty member to do that, but it's really necessary to do that. So I will just say that part. And the other thing is to actually take out your agenda when you're teaching. The first year teaching, it's so overwhelming. Like, how are you supposed to, it's just too overwhelming. I couldn't do it I just couldn't. My second year teaching, I got out the agenda book. You know, this is how much time of Monday I'm going to spend class prep, and this time I'm going to spend writing. And I actually allotted every single day to writing, and I was really very scheduled about it. And that was the only way I got anything done. And I did the very well placed one article first, 2008. I had an article come out. I spent forever on it. And then it won an award from the Society of Medical Anthropology, and I was really excited, and people knew kind of what I was doing based on that one article. And it was kind of like the juicy bit without giving away the whole book, because it was actually a juicy part, a chapter. It's not the argument of the book. The other thing is, what is my book doing? I think also, just like Eileen said, it's not just that the conclusion is the introduction and the introduction is conclusion, which is true, that often happens. It's also that I was writing it without knowing what the structure, I knew that the structure was wrong. I knew that my chapter order was wrong. I knew that, but I just couldn't figure it out. I would change it daily. And I talked to Emily Martin, who I admire her tremendously. She's a really wonderful medical anthropologist in my field. And I was like, how did you figure out it's just, I can't do it. And she would say something like, well, I mean, you recognize that it could be a bunch of different ways, but you pick one that works. It's not that like this is the only way you could ever order it, but you pick out one, recognizing that you could have done it a different way. And that was helpful. But I also just had to rewrite it a gazillion times until I finally realized that I don't have to write this chronologically. I'm not a historian. I don't, sort of things that I felt like I had to, like, I can tell the story the way I want to tell it is really important. The other thing I wanted to say was about where is your biggest contribution? Again, like, what kind of book who's your audience? I really wanted this to be the book that someone could use in an Islam and modernity class, someone could use in a bioethics class, and people would use an introduction to medical anthropology. Those were kind of what I had really hoped for. And so I looked at those books, and I listened to the students as I was teaching. And I think teaching really helps with the writing, because you try out formulations, and then students are like, what? That doesn't make... And then you figure out how to say it in a way that makes sense to them, or you realize which part of the books that you're teaching they just can't get, or they can't read beyond because they lose interest. And think about how to frame yours so that that doesn't happen.